into a brand new wave, drowning out the noise that's tame. Liberty whispers through the brave, breaking free from every chain. Nullify the rules they crave, crypto beats that pave the way. Anarchy with minds that's safe, algorithms from dawn to day. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride. Beyond control we take a stand, casting off the iron brand. Freedom flowing through our hands, revolution's our command. Decentralize the way we plan, all together we expand. Breaking shackles for the clan, in this journey we're on pan. Out of bounds and out of sight, building futures pure and bright. Escape the grip and win the fight. Welcome into the legacy ride.
Welcome to another edition of Legacy News, episode 28. I am the legacy of Jennifer and Kaiser. I am Zachary Kaiser, and we got another great one to start the week for you. 5 p.m. Eastern is where you can hold it down and listen, join the conversation, whether in the chat on the premiere or jump into the comments, because we need to get everything out there and we need you to join the conversation and then go out and be the outreach. With that, welcome in, Andrew Joseph.
Yeehaw, I'm the new guy. I got a new microphone.
He has a new microphone, everybody. He's also a radio disc jockey for VCPR.
Pressing issues with me, Maurice Chavez. Not
Maurice
Chaves or
Chavez.
Chavez. It's Chavez.
You are such a dork.
I know. I love that old program. That was hilarious.
It's Vice City, everybody, if you don't know. So he's a
Die, evildoer. Die.
nerd. He's in a taco. Notice how I said taco.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he's a taco, everybody. Eat
I just
a
don't let that
taco.
slide.
So, with that, on this glorious, glorious day that we're recording this Sunday, this Sunday, February 9th, which it will be 5 p.m. Eastern, as I said, February 10th, when you see us go live. We got an interesting one. We decided to do something different and compare and contrast the reality of the world today utilizing video games. We started with Metal Gear Solid 2 last Monday to be exact. This Monday, let's continue down that route, because I think this clip from Red Dead, this is from an NPC interaction on Red Dead Redemption 2 during the epilogue, and then it transitions to one of the early clips in the early game of Red Dead Redemption 1 with the McFarlanes at McFarlane's Ranch. And I think it's very, very interesting on what they talk about. Listen to Drew on this one when we get into that clip. It was a fantastic cut. I like how they cut this clip, whoever did it. But let's check it out. Let's dive in.
Okay.
What do you want?
Nothing. Just looking around.
This is private property.
I meant no harm. It's quite a place you got.
It's very nice, but it ain't mine. I'm farming it for some other fella. I had some bad luck on my place. Fella here had some bad luck himself. Him and his family got hit hard by the sickness. Him and his daughter went off traveling, trying to deal with the sadness, I guess.
Well, hello, Mr. Marston. How are you?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Did you meet my father? John Marston, this is my father, Drew McFarland.
Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Marston. Please. So, my daughter informs me that you're here on some secret mission to remove some undesirables from the county.
Something like that. I'm grateful for the hospitality, sir.
Well, you know, we've lived here for 30 years now. Came here from the east. The land had never been settled. For 10 years, we fought the Indians. Tough men. Then we had outlaws, and we had drought, and we had smallpox, terrible winters, cholera. I buried more of my children than I raised.
Sorry to hear that, sir.
I've seen strong men wither and die under that unforgiving sun. That whole herds of cattle take sick and die. But I've never once doubted my life here.
No, sir.
When I hear about this so-called federal government sending out agents to covertly murder and control people, then I start to worry. I mean, yeah, all right, Williamson is a menace, and men like him are the plague. But isn't a government agent a worse menace? And all that symbolizes, I mean.
You may be right, sir.
Well, you're a brave man. And you're always going to be welcome here. But you tell your friends out east that we don't want to live like that out here. Like sneaking around and spying and secret missions. Right? It's preposterous.
Trust me, sir. I agree with you.
Good. Good. Well, we won't insult you any further. Come on, Bonnie. We got things to do.
Mr. Marston, do you want to join us? It's Daddy's favorite pastime, apart from political discourse, that is.
What is?
Breaking in horses. Come on. I hear you're a pretty decent rider. For a city dweller, that is.
I hear you're a pretty decent rider for a city dweller, that is. That's a joke. That's a little tongue in cheek, considering John was an outlaw that didn't really hang in the sprawl of the cities often.
He didn't belong, man.
He didn't belong. What do you take of that, actually, what Drew states? Especially towards the end.
No context, never played the game. I mean, you kind of dropped me in here. It seems... I don't know. I'm not sure, because there's two scenes. There's the first scene where the guy comes out, and he's talking about, I really don't belong here, but they decided to leave, and I guess he's adversely possessing the house. Yeah, house sitting or something like that.
He's adverse. He's not adversely possessing the house. He's basically babysitting the property while they're gone. Yeah. So, and that's the context of that little cutscene. What they're trying to provide and why they provide that scene right there is that house in the first game, which you cannot really interact with unless you play online. There is a mission with Bonnie, so you do actually get to see Bonnie. But that house, you're at the McFarland's Ranch. That house is the home of the ranchers that own the property. Home McFarland's Ranch. That's the McFarland home. So the context of that home is, it's just kind of a segue, a little segue to symbolize, hey, you're walking past the house that you're wandering through the little town or the ranch that you're gonna inevitably learn a little bit more of and interact and meet the McFarlands later on in the first game. So it's kind of like an Easter egg on that standard. Interesting interaction though. So let's talk about that first interaction. What do you think? Now that you kind of understand what the point of that interaction might have to be, considering the context of that being the McFarland house and then leading into the other scene that's cut into this clip. What's your take on that short little interaction with the NPC?
Well, my first take was I go back to the egoism and the whole well, that was their property, but I fought for it and I secured it for myself. And if you want it, you got to fight for it. If I secure it for yourself, that was my first take. But given a little more context, that kind of puts it up in the air for me. I still see the need. I still feel like, that's trying to secure private property from would-be onlookers.
Okay, so you're basically going to go off of the take that he's there securing his own right to the land because the original owners aren't home at the moment.
Yeah.
And nobody knows when they may return or if they will
If
even
at all.
return. We don't know. This is 1907 in the epilogue, and realistically, it makes zero sense. That it's a NPC interaction in the free roam, so you can basically go run around and do whatever. But it makes no sense for John really to be there in the context of the game, which you have yet to play, obviously. So you would know, but John has never actually been in New Austin. He states this in the first game. He's never been in New Austin. And yet here you are walking just down the road in McFarland's Ranch, Hennigan's Stead, and you're John Marston, 1907. So is that a lie? Or is Rockstar just letting you run around and gallivant across the free roam, and whatever happens makes zero sense? It's just a game. But I digress away from that. The fact of the matter is he walks up to this house, and this guy is very protective. There's two reasons why he's very protective. One, he's trying to hold a claim to this obvious abandoned property, egoism, because the owners aren't there, or he has been instructed with the responsibility of the farm and of the house while the owners are away. And so he's just basically being a genuine onlooker with a random soul he's never seen pass through. He's being overprotective.
Yeah.
Am I gathering that through your site?
That's
right?
from my perspective, yeah. And spoiler alert, not to mix games here, but just a second. I've always been a gun guy. That was a very good game back in the game PlayStation 2.
Also a good game. Very good game. And in fact, I would say that was probably the predecessor to Red Dead. Even though Rockstar does have a first game called Red Dead Revolver, I think Gun kind of was the first true Western style video game that set up what Red Dead and Redemption and Red Dead Redemption 2 would become.
Yeah.
Red Dead Revolver just kind of it expands upon the legend of Red Dead because you have little Easter eggs that in both games that take you into the Revolver universe. But has very little to do with Red Dead Redemption. But as far as like the modern take of a more realistic vision of a Western in the video game universe, gun is kind of that setting point that would lead to Red Dead Redemption. And inevitably Red Dead Redemption 2, the release in 2018. So, but yeah, Gun is a great game. Great game. I was a connoisseur of Black. You know how everybody was playing Call of Duty and shit?
Yeah, you're talking about
Black
on the original Xbox. I've
on
seen
the original Xbox.
I've seen it listed on the store several times. I think I downloaded it. I never played it.
Oh, I would play it. It's awesome. I still have it. I might actually go play it. If you like COD, you'll really love Black because it puts Call of Duty to shame.
Once you go Black, you never go back. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. But let's get back. Let's get to the meat and the potatoes of that was the appetizer, right? Let's get to the meat and the potatoes. Let's get to the entree of this. As far as Drew and Marston's conversation, more so Drew, there's some things that he significantly says that can kind of relate to today. We live under a regime of overstretching governance, agencies all over the corner. Community is based more in the enamor of snitching. See something, say something. One thing that held me in this scene was when he, and I'm paraphrasing at this point because I've gone into a tangent and I've kind of forgot exactly the exact words, but he basically says, I don't like the spying and that's
intrusive
that these agents, the intrusive behavior that these agents that are coming over here. It's one thing, and he does mention this. It's one thing to go after criminals, sure. He mentions Bill Williamson. He's a bad dude. He's a plague, but isn't the government in the same boat? Couldn't you see them as just the same menace? So what are your thoughts on what Drew is trying to say here?
Was he foreshadowing Corn Pop?
I think he was foreshadowing Corn Pop. Corn Pop was a bad man.
No,
he was a bad dude.
I think it's a universal, phenomenon. People don't like people intruding in their business and setting up secret organizations, if you want to call it that. They go into the Enneagram 6 territory, the conspiracies. They don't like the things that they can't control, and knowing that there are people out there doing it. It really bothers them.
You can maintain your own order within your own sphere, and when somebody else is out there doing exactly what you believe you can do on your own, because you just want to be left alone, then why can't one be able to do that, right? Because what happens when these government agents come in and they get rid of all the outlaws, right? They clear way of the outlaws, but they have to have somebody says it in this game. Maybe it wasn't Dutch, but anyways, or no, it was Dutch. But anyways, you have to. It was Dutch. It was at the end of Red Dead. It was his little monologue. But they have to justify their wages, right? So after they're done with one goal, they have to create another boogeyman in order to justify their job, correct? So what happens when they come in? They invade, so to speak, and they get the job done, and they do a good job. They're doing an actual service. But then what happens when they no longer are needed for that service? Do they just go away?
Well, it reminds me of the quote by Lysander Spooner: "A secret ballot is a secret government full of criminals, thieves, and liars and murderers." Right? And like you said, do they just go away? No, they intensify and they escalate their power whenever possible. And look at the situation we're in now. We're trying to, and this goes back to like I've said about before. If you've ever listened to the old time radio program, The Shadow, there's this episode, and you just Google it, type The Brain, The Shadow, old time radio, and you'll get the episode number. And you listen to the episode, they're talking about the machine, the political machine. This is back in the 1920s and 30s, okay? This is something that's been, and this predates The Shadow. This is, before World War One or before World War Two. This is something that's been going on for a very long time that people have been dealing with. They've been trying to escape, and it's not even something that people are trying, people doing on purpose. It's just a byproduct of our centralized federal governance. Is that when something needs to be done, someone else has to pay the consequence, and that causes more calls for intervention. And which means it needs to be more criminals, there needs to be more people in jail, there needs to be more direct intervention, and it's slow and it's steady and it's meticulous. And everyone knows it's a problem, but the way they marketed, the way the media market situations, they justify the pain because they're afraid. Goes back to Enneagram 6. They're afraid of the consequences of not having something to build off of. They're afraid of not having a structure to live off of. Then Enneagram 6.
Define consequences.
Well, I mean, okay, I'm this is very broad when you ask that. I'm just poking here.
Let me rephrase it. Let me rephrase it. Define consequences through a set of established structure.
Okay. Police. They don't care about what happens after they give somebody a ticket or they take them to jail. They say, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's just how it is." But they're also dependent on the system because they're afraid of what happens outside of there not being their the job not existing, because they know that if they don't have something in place, that people will rob, steal, and murder and rape. But
that's interesting. That's interesting that you say that. That is interesting that you say that because they have to justify the reasons why they have a job, why they're a public tit sucker. But honestly, and I can use Lawrenceburg, Indiana as an example of this. And yes, the casino is a big part of why crime ran rampant as well, but only a little bit and pieces of it. The fact of the matter is when I was a kid, Lawrenceburg had like 5 cops. It was just a typical little mundane small town America. I think we're at like maybe 100 in a small town of fucking 5,000 now in 2025, and it's from the mid 90s to now. Little old Lawrenceburg, next door to me, because I'm not in Lawrenceburg anymore, has more criminal output. And I think a little bit of that has more to do with the input of expanding a law enforcement apparatus to have that monopoly on violence. So they need to justify their wages, but at the same time, people aren't going to commit crime unless you give them a reason to commit crime. At least that's from my
Greendale kid.
Yeah, Greendale's getting pretty bad too, actually. Greendale's nothing but renters and junkies now. You know that?
See, that's why I love.
Because all of the speaking of Greendale, and Greendale's actually expanded on they've had to expand their police from like 6. Yeah, I think 2 of them were part-time at the time, and now they're up to like 12. So, and they're a little bit bad off. And another thing is property values have gone up, and now they've dropped and kind of leveled because all of it's rental. everybody has either died off and the inherited ended up selling off, or and people have moved in and they've bought those properties and they've turned them into rental. So what do you get when you have rental, when you don't have ownership, when you don't have very many people that actually own? What do you get? I'm asking you the question. What do you get when you don't have as many owners, ownership of property, and it's all rental?
Well, first thing I think of is you get people who are not so attached to the community coming in trying to, establish their business, and they don't think about the consequences of how they're regulating their business, and it actually makes the community worse.
So it's basically an invasion of exterior cultures trying to mesh its own culture in with a community culture that was already fine to begin with. And you're
Well,
trying to annihilate, you're trying to you extinguish one culture for another.
it's a gradient. It's a gradient. Some businesses are actually, they don't have their head up their butt. They know what they're doing, and they're very focused on their one particular project. It depends on if the business has got too many projects going on and not enough people to properly manage the projects, and so they just come in and wreck the whole business that they're trying to ecosystem that they're trying to develop. That's a real problem that happens nowadays, is that you got these investment companies who are just trying to make as much money as possible with as little amount of effort as possible for people who are looking for a return. And
This is
they want
understandable.
they go belly up. It happens.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just
It-
that's how it is.
Yeah, everybody's trying to succeed in any capacity that they can succeed. So we're not here to say fuck you to all these investment businesses moving in and taking over large swaths of property and trying to bring a return. We're all here to succeed in any capacity that we can. But the difference is you are seeing the decay of community because you're missing the single factor that makes the community strong, and that is the community in itself. You're taking community out of the community, and you're just turning
This
it
goes back to
into a business investment.
Let's go back to the episode we had last week about Metal Gear Solid. They said we're not trying to create content, we're trying to create context, right? If you don't have both of those things in line, then you're going to fail every time, because you have to have it's like Sears, okay? It was for a long time a very successful company, but it got mismanaged because we just had these people come in who was like, oh yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. It's, if you don't go along with the program that's established and then you just start running wild like a bull in the china shop, you're gonna fail every time. That's why Sears is no longer around. It's because these people, they had this foundational myth, this identity, and they just crushed it up like an empty soda can and threw it away because they didn't care about. They wanted the clout. They didn't want the responsibility.
So the moral of the story, everybody, is ignore the media, ignore the official narratives. The invasion is not from south of the border. Yes, there are issues. There will always be issues when cultures converge and when you have arbitrary borders that are secured. Sure, I get that there is a fear level, but part of that is manufactured so the government can divide you and conquer you. The real invasion are those that are trying to destroy you and your community from within, not without.
Identity.
They're trying to take your identity, and they've understand. And let's go to the border issue as we close out. Do you think that there's an invasion coming from south of the border, Andrew?
I think that it's if you go look at the Russian model, what they did is they brought in people who didn't necessarily, they didn't have any, like I said before, they didn't have context or to the content of the community, and they squandered the voice of the community for political reasons. And if you
So-
think about it in that way, the people coming in from outside of the country, from China, from Russia, from South America, from Europe. I mean, I'm sure there were some Europeans that were coming over illegally that way, like
Oh, of course.
who were being smuggled. They want the marketing, the free world. That's what they want, the marketing. They don't
want a
care about
home.
how they get it. They want a home. They want, because the home that they came from, they didn't want the responsibility of fixing them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Trump, for whatever happens with what's going on, I'm not saying it's good or bad. It has the potential to be good, because he's creating a solid identity. He's creating a territory and identity. Donald Trump, if he goes through and follows through with what he's promised to do, I mean, I could see how that could potentially, finally consolidate, because we've been trying to, establish an identity. We were really close after World War II for a long. We've been, we've never had a consistent identity. We've always been fluctuating. It's like Russia and China. You know how there's always been that's the cyclical nature of revolving door. We've been a revolving door because we don't have a consistent identity. This is
We're a
his
nation of
opportunity.
immigrants.
That's
We are
right.
a nation of immigrants. So, I mean,
That's
we're
right.
not going to have a full-fledged
And even
consolidated identity.
that melting pot narrative, there's even questions about that, because there's back in the 1800s, that was pitched as a mechanism of propaganda, and there's a whole argument for that. I'm not saying it's true or not. I'm just saying, because you need to look into this yourself. Don't just believe me. Don't go off of what I'm saying. Look in.
What
look
I'm saying
into this
is,
for yourself.
speaking of that narrative, what I'm saying is I don't like the word melting pot. We are a nation of immigrants. We don't necessarily have
Historically,
ever had. We've never actually held a articulate identity. We've always reflected different factions politically. I mean, at one point, the Irish were treated like absolute trash. One reason, because many of the early immigrants through the generations that came from England, Scotland, they were Protestant. You're seeing an influx of Catholics. So there's a Protestant Catholic love-hate relationship there. But then the Irish ended up finding themselves politically. They found their political hold, and they took their political stand and became a large, vast political bubble within that classification of our history. So we've gone from this effect. So just because we've been a quote unquote melting pot of diversity, a nation of immigrants, does not tell the whole story, because each faction that comes over, whether it ends up finding its own niche, whether it's the Irish, whether it's the German, whether it's the Pole. That's actually where the immigration narrative begins, is the Ellis Island narrative and the influx of Eastern European, predominantly Polish, and surprisingly gay, that were coming over in the latter half of the 19th century, early 20th century. So that's where this narrative kind of gets, I don't know,
milked.
it gets milked. It gets milked. So into something not so good. And we go from there. We've always had our issues culturally and racially and ethically with ethnically with the Chinese. Hate to break it to you, everybody, but the Chinese built the railroads.
Yeah.
True story. So did the Irish, so did the blacks, so did Mexicans. A lot of core groups built the railroads. So, um, but but that's where it comes into is we don't have a consistent ideology in our cultural identity, and we have so many different cultures that mesh, and we're fearful of each other. And we're fear and another thing that hurts is the fact that we went to war with each other and we came out into we were forced into an apparatus of unity rather than allowed to just come together organically. We were forced into togetherness after the Civil
It was an
War.
abusive relationship.
Mm-hmm. So, and that's my take on this is what is the real invasion? The real invasion is to destroy your identity so that you accept Washington, D.C. and the bankers.
Yeah.
How about you, Andrew?
I mean, I can definitely see that. We are considered property of the District of Columbia by law. The court rulings.
1871, American Reorganization Act.
I've got a huge email list of just different stupid laws. So we can go over that one time eventually. And it just goes law by law by law. And it's ridiculous. But
well, it's and this will be another one too. But the fact that the Social Security Act, your Social Security number, your straw man, is attached to maritime admiralty law, and so because of the water in the womb, the term water broke when a woman is about to go into labor, right? That has reverence into maritime admiralty law. So short, simple terms, lame terms, where because of that, you belong to the state, not your mother. And then your mother signs off to it when she signs your documents for the Social Security card and the birth certificate. So you belong to the state when you're born, even with both parents.
Yeah.
That's why it's so easy to take for the state to take children away from parents. Because of
it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. So, but with that case, and honestly, because I just said that, who are the body snatchers? Who are the body snatchers, and what is the invasion? What is this invasion of? It's an invasion of your soul. It's the invasion of your conscience, and the body snatchers are whomever is able to get you to persuade you onto their side. Doesn't have to necessarily be the government.
I'd like to leave with my final message here is it's not a direct quote, but it's something I saw Michael Malice say once. It says, "In the heart of a slave, it beats, or in the body of a slave, it beats the heart of a tyrant."
And that is why we are all slaves by consent. Peace.